Hello music fans, welcome to the Death by Unicorn channel. Today I've got a really special video for you because it's my 300th video on this channel. Really hard to believe that I posted that many videos, but it's true. Today I'm talking about my 25 favorite albums from this decade, the 2020s. And I know this decade's not over yet. We're only just over halfway through 2023, but I wanted to do something special for my 300th video, and this is the idea that popped into my head, and I think people will enjoy these album recommendations. If you like prog metal, most of the albums on here are prog metal, as that's my favorite genre. I have a handful of prog rock albums on here, as well as an alternative metal, hard rock, and a mathcore album, so stick around to the end if you like those genres. I'm sure there will be something on here that you're going to want to listen to, and I'll be showing off my vinyl and CD copies of these as I talk through them. I don't have all of these on vinyl or CD, I just have about 15 of the 25. I started this channel about 9 years ago, and it started as just a channel for original music that I was making. It stayed that way for about the first 6 years of the channel, where I only posted about 30 videos in those 6 years' time. But just over 3 years ago, in 2020, I started posting my favorite albums of various years. I posted album ranking videos for artists' discographies around that time, and it became more of a music commentary and discussion channel. And that's when I started posting a lot of videos during the pandemic when everyone had to stay from home. It was something to do, and I thought it was enjoyable, and I got a lot of good comments and recommendations from people on the videos that helped me discover new music. So I plan to keep doing this because I like discovering new music this way, and I hope to introduce other people to some new music that they haven't heard before. So without further ado, let's jump right in with number 25, which is I Like It by Toehider. This is a progressive rock album from 2020, and it's by this great Australian artist, Toehider. It's their fourth album. I say they, but it's really like a one-person project by Michael Mills. He brings in some guests when he needs to for live and sometimes for recording, I think. But he's just really great. One of the best vocalists out there in the game right now. He can do really high-pitched vocals reminiscent of Queen. Mostly clean singing and melodic stuff, but every now and then he can let out some screams too, and he can go into metal territory. This album doesn't go there too often, but it dabbles a little bit. Next up, with number 24, I have Wallflowers by Ginger. This is progressive metal, kind of progressive metalcore. It's from 2021, and it's the fourth album by this Ukrainian band signed to Napalm Records. They have an amazing frontwoman, Tatiana, who is possibly my favorite female vocalist at the moment. That's a tough one as well, but she's up there. Really amazing screams. She can do such great like growls and high shrieks, but she's also a great singer and can do a lot of beautiful atmospheric stuff, as well as poppy hooks, and even like kind of reggae sounding moments. She could do a lot of different vocal styles. Her versatility is very impressive. Next up, at number 23, I have Where Myth Becomes Memory by Rollo Tomasi. This is the mathcore album on my list, and it's from 2022. It's the sixth album by this band from the UK, and here's another one with a great female lead vocalist who can scream like a beast and sing like an angel. Eva, really great. Highly recommend this band. And now we'll get into some albums where I actually have a physical copy. My number 22 is Panther by Pain of Salvation. And this is a great album from 2020. It's the 11th album by this Swedish band. Came out on Inside Out Music, and it's not my favorite album by this band, but it's up there. Maybe I'll do a ranking Pain of Salvation's discography video one day, because they have a really strong discography. They don't really make anything bad. Everything they put out is great. So I highly recommend this band to fans of progressive metal. And there's no harsh vocals or anything really. It's all very accessible. There's some weird stuff though, so maybe I shouldn't say accessible. But if you like stuff like Dream Theater, Spock's Beard, that kind of progressive metal that's not too metal, I think you'll like this. Next up, I have one that I have on vinyl, which came out this year, which is Ne Obliviscaris with Xool. And this is more extreme progressive metal from Australia, the fourth album by this band. And this came out on Seasons of Mist label, which is a great label. And really everything Ne Obliviscaris puts out is great. I don't think this is their best album either, but it's really strong. And the interesting thing about them is they have violin in their sound, which you don't hear as much in extreme metal, but it works really well. They have two vocalists, one that does brutal, harsh vocals, kind of the extreme stuff, and then the other one who plays the violin, he does the clean vocals as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing this band live this year when they come to North America. Next up, I've got another one from this year. At number 20, I have Holocene by The Ocean. And this is another progressive metal, but this is more progressive post-metal with some sludge metal influences. And it's the 10th album by this German band. They're on their own record label that they founded, I believe, called Pelagic Records. And maybe I should get a physical copy of this because I don't have one yet. But this is really cool. It's a lot of their previous material was pretty heavy, pretty extreme, had a lot of brutality to it. This is probably their second softest album in their discography, I believe. Features mostly clean singing, but there are some moments where it goes into heavy screaming. So you got to be ready for that. But it's very atmospheric, very beautiful, very hypnotic, very peaceful. Really good production, really good keyboard sounds on here, great guitar riffs. Really everything's just well done here. And my number 19 is Hushed and Grim by Mastodon. This is progressive metal again, kind of similar-ish to The Ocean that I talked about last, and it's kind of got that sludge metal influence. That's kind of more how they started out. Mastodon started out more sludge metal, but they've gone more towards prog as their career progressed. So this one's still more on the prog side, but it's got some psychedelic and stonery vibes to it. And it's a double album, so it's pretty long. I think it might be the longest album on this list at 86 minutes. It's their 8th album. They're from the US, and it's just a really great album. Everything they do is great. This probably isn't their best album that they've ever put out, but I enjoy everything in their discography. My favorites, I think, are Emperor of Sand and Crack the Sky, but I like this one as well, and pretty much everything they do. Going to my number 18, I have another one I have on vinyl. This one I actually have on vinyl and CD. It's Porcupine Tree with Closure Continuation. So really great album. It's the most recent Porcupine Tree album that came out in 2022, and it's after they took a really long break. Their previous album before this was from The Incident, was called The Incident. And yeah, this is their 11th album. They're a British band. This is more progressive rock. It's not so much metal. They do have some metal moments from time to time, but a lot of the songs are pretty soft, pretty catchy, pretty accessible. And everybody loves Steven Wilson. He's one of the big names in the prog scene, in modern prog. He remixes all the classic albums. He puts out his own solo material. But Porcupine Tree is kind of where he rose to fame, and it's my favorite band of his. I mean, I really like his solo material too. He's been in a lot of other bands as well, such as Blackfield and No Man, but for me it's really Porcupine Tree is number one for him, and his solo catalog is number two. I dabble in listening to the other stuff, but nothing compares to Porcupine Tree and his solo material for me. I really like this Porcupine Tree album. It's not my favorite, but my favorites are all the ones that have Gavin Harrison on them. So this and the four that precede it are, I think it's four. There are only 5 albums with Gavin Harrison on them so far. Yeah, he's a great drummer. Steven Wilson does great on vocals and composes most of the music. He plays bass on this album, which is not typical. He replaced their he didn't invite back their previous bassist for this album, unfortunately, but he did have Richard Barbieri on keyboards, and he does a great job as well. And my number 17 is Endless Hallway by He Is Legend. I don't have a physical copy of this. This is more like a hard rock album, but it's very hard to describe the genre of He Is Legend because they kind of started out as like metalcore, I guess, and kind of maybe post-hardcore, had some emo influences in there. But then they've always been very progressive in a way as well, and then they kind of just went more like hard rock and had this like grunge and alternative influence in there, but still kept their like metal and hardcore and emo influences and like smashed that all together. They do scream a little bit, but they focus more on melody. They have really great vocals, but really great crushing heavy guitar riffs. So it's definitely a heavy band. But sometimes it's hard to even say they're metal, but they're kind of metal, kind of hard rock. It's their 7th album. I think they're a really underrated band. They're an American band. I've seen them live. They're really great. I highly recommend them. I think they need a lot more love. I'm surprised they're not bigger. They should really be a lot bigger than they are. Next, I'll talk about another one I have on vinyl, which came out this year, 2023. It's Periphery 5, Gent Is Not a Genre. And this is my number 16 album of the decade so far. And it's progressive metal, and it's gent. Yeah, they say gent is not a genre, and I guess it's like a subgenre or a micro genre of, metal is a genre for sure. Progressive metal, I guess, is a genre or a subgenre. And gent is like a micro genre or categorization of progressive metal. It's the like 7-string or 8-string, like low down tune, chugging, palm muted, syncopated, polyrhythmic, polymeter type of groovy metal. That's kind of how I define gent. Put it down in the comments if you have a definition for gent, and I think with a definition it can become a genre if enough people say it is. Anyway, the title Gent Is Not a Genre is more of a joke. I think Periphery popularized gent, and they maybe even coined the term. But I think what they mean by that is that a band shouldn't just do that and then say that's their genre. Like Periphery does more than that. They bring in electronic influences, they bring in pop, they bring in like jazz on this album, showing that they have more variety and versatility than kind of the boring copycat bands in the gent genre that just gent the whole time. If that's what they're saying with this title, then I agree with it. I also know it's kind of just tongue-in-cheek and kind of a joke with them. They're not super serious about their titles. But yeah, I don't want to hear bands that just gent the whole time. I like that Periphery changes it up a little bit and has some variety to their music. This is their 7th album. everything they put out is great. I actually really like their debut album. That's probably my favorite because I feel like that's like the innovative album where they were like really hungry and young, and it's a little more raw. It's not like as polished with the production. The production on here is pretty solid. I love how it sounds. Everything they do is great, and I look forward to hearing what they do next. Number 15 is one that I've got on vinyl and CD actually, and it's A View from the Top of the World by Dream Theater. Got this vinyl, and I feel like maybe this little CD just came in with the vinyl. I don't know. Like I don't have like a jewel case for it. It's just got a little sleeve. But yeah, really great band, Dream Theater. I mean, they really kind of popularized the genre that I love, progressive metal, back in 1992 with their album Images and Words and their big hit Pull Me Under. This is their 15th album, so they've made a lot of music over the years. I think I don't have too much. This is the deepest in an artist's discography that I get on this list. So not too many bands can put out their 15th album and make like my top 25 of the decade list. Usually bands kind of fizzle out by that time, and some might say Dream Theater is going a little bit downhill, but I still think they're really great. Maybe they're not as innovative as they used to, and they've kind of found their formula, but what they do perfectly. They're amazing musicians, virtuosic players all around, with John Petrucci on guitar, just a mad shredder. He also produces this album. Jordan Rudess, amazing on the keyboards. Mike Mangini on drums is really awesome. Replacement for Mike Portnoy. I do love Mike Portnoy. He's probably like my favorite drummer, but Mike Mangini does a great job replacing him after he leaves Dream Theater. And Mike Mangini plays on this album. John Mayung's great on bass. James LaBrie on the albums is solid on vocals. I have seen them live a few times. He gets a little shaky sometimes live. Now, in his prime, he was amazing. I think live he struggles a little bit on some of the songs, and you can definitely hear it. But in the studio, he's a great vocalist, and he's the sound of Dream Theater. So, gotta love him as a vocalist, despite some of his struggles. I know he's had some challenges with, I think, like food poisoning or something that gave him some vocal problems, but he's still doing really well on these albums. Number 14, I have Turf Ascension by Bubble Math. This is progressive rock, and it's from 2022. It's the third album of this American band, put out on Cuneiform Records. This is really strange, kind of quirky progressive rock. Maybe you're a fan of Gentle Giant, kind of Mr. Bungle, very like angular, like King Crimson, that kind of quirky, weird stuff. It's not for normal people. So if you're a weirdo that likes weird progressive rock, then listen to this. It's not like metal or anything like heavy. It's not extreme in that way. It's more extreme in its like quirkiness and composition, not sounding like what you would normally hear, but I really enjoy it. Next up, I have Vengeance by 12 Foot Ninja. That's my number 13 album of the decade so far. This is more alternative metal, but it's kind of like funky and weird and experimental and avant-garde as well, so maybe kind of progressive. It's from 2021. It's the third album by this Australian band. They have a track on here that features Tatiana from Ginger. I think it's called Over and Out. That's really great. Highly recommend it. I think this band has either disbanded, or at least their singer is no longer with the band. I hope they just find a new singer and keep going, or maybe the musicians from the band will make a new project, and I'll look forward to hearing what they do next, because there's nothing much like them. I guess they're kind of like Mr. Bungle. If Mr. Bungle came out later and had some gent influence in there, as well as some like new metal and alternative metal influence, like you can hear the gent, you can hear the like Slipknot, System of a Down kind of vibes, but then there's also like that funk that you could hear from Mr. Bungle, but they're also more accessible and have like poppier choruses than Mr. Bungle, so they have more pop influence as well. Really great band. Highly recommend 12 Foot Ninja Vengeance. Number 12, I've got The Ocean again. Their second time appearing on this list. First artist, I think, to appear twice, but they won't be the last. I've got some other artists that I've already mentioned that will appear again on this list, so I didn't limit myself to one album per artist. But yeah, The Ocean, Phanerozoic 2, Mesozoic / Cenozoic. I think these are all like periods in time in the development of the Earth, and like The Ocean kind of has like or not just a concept album, but almost like a concept discography that carries on from album to album, where they do different eras of the world. I guess, are they like geological eras? I don't actually know too much about this, so I don't know like what order this is and how long ago it is and what how that works. But I think it's cool that they commit to this theme of like geological eras and how the world evolved, and that's kind of their theme of their music. Again, progressive post-metal, some sludgy influences. This one's heavier than Holocene from this year. Phanerozoic 2 came out in 2020. It's their 8th album. Really great album, produced by Jens Bogren. Great producer. He's produced some other great stuff as well. And next up, I've got Aphelion by Leprous at number 11, which I have on CD here. I've got, what is this? Does this have 2 discs? No, just 1 disc. But it's got some bonus tracks on here. It's got a Prophecy to Trust, and then it's got a live track, Acquired Taste. I'm not sure if every CD version of Aphelion has this, or if this is like a special limited edition or something. Let me know if anybody knows that, but I like it. The bonus track's great. The live track at the end is a nice bonus to have as well. Solid album. This is more progressive rock. It's from 2021. It's the 7th album by this Norwegian band, put out on Inside Out Records. I really like everything that Leprous has done throughout their career. My favorite album of theirs is probably Melina, not this one. But I really like this one as well. I like everything they do. They're not as heavy as they used to be. Like, they used to be metal, but I don't know if this is really metal. Maybe one song. Yeah, Nighttime Disguise at the end. At the very end, it's all clean singing all the way through the album until the very last song. Right near the end, he lets out some screams like he used to, which I thought was really cool. So mostly just like progressive rock, not too metal, like kind of softer, but really beautiful singing. Einar Solberg is up there right now in terms of my favorite male vocalist as well. He's kind of the band leader. He writes all the vocal melodies and he plays keyboards, but the drumming on here is fantastic. Really everything on here is great. So check out Leprous. I think everyone will find something to enjoy there. You might have to, some people might not like the timbre of Einar's voice. It's definitely an acquired taste. He has a very high-pitched voice, but it's really well done once you get used to it. Number 10, getting into my top 10 of the decade here, I have Opus by Nospin. This is from this year, and it's progressive metal for fans of Haken, Dream Theater. This is a debut album, and I think it's the only debut album on my list that made my top 25 of the decade so far. They're an American band, and yeah, I never heard of them until this year, and this just blew me away. It's a concept album. It's got a whole story. I don't know that I can explain the story very well, but I think the guy who lives in a house with some other people starts witnessing some murders, but then maybe it's like he can see them in his dreams before they happen or something, and then he can try to undo them somehow. That's kind of what I got from listening to the lyrics. I'm not a lyrics person, but I love the music on here. They are great players, like on the Dream Theater and Haken level of playing. Great compositions here, repeating themes throughout the album, like really starting it and ending it properly. So it's definitely a sit down and listen to the album from start to finish. They have long prog epics on here. Really great progressive metal album by Nosman called Opus. Number 9, I have Woe by An Abstract Illusion, which I've got on vinyl here. Really solid album from 2022. This is a Swedish band, and it's their second album, put out on Willow Tip Records, another great record label that's putting out lots of awesome stuff. And this is kind of for fans of older Opeth, as it's kind of progressive death metal, I guess. Maybe fans of Wilderun will like this, and fans of Persephone. So check this out if you like those bands. And next up at my number 8 spot, I have my favorite album from last year, which I got on both vinyl and CD, which is Toehider, and I have little to no memory of these memories. That's the name of the album. It's from 2022. It's more progressive rock. It's all just one long song. I think it's a 47-minute song or something. It's the 5th album by this Australian project, and this is the second time I mentioned Toehider on the list. Project of Michael Mills. Really great vocalist. I just love his high-pitched vocals and the harmonies that he does that sound like Queen. And this album really has like every genre, well, not every genre, but a lot of genres over the course of its 47 minutes. He does like video game music, he does pop, he does metal, he does prog, he does kind of like doomier, slower metal, he does like faster metal, he does folk, really everything, and he does it all really well. And I think he plays all the instruments on this album, which is just impressive, the level of musical talent that Michael Mills of Toehider has here. Number 7 is Fauna by Haken. That's from this year, and it's the 7th album by this British band. I saw them live, and they are great. I've seen them live, how many times? Maybe 3 times now. Every time I've seen them, they've been great. I saw them open for Symphony X. I've seen them headline most recently on this Fauna tour. And then I forget who they were playing with the first. Those are the last 2 times I saw them. The first time I saw them, I think they played with Leprous and Bent Knee, which was great. Every time I see them, every album they put out is great. They're really like the band in progressive metal now. They're the band to beat if you want to become the kings of progressive metal. Try to dethrone Haken. Like, there's maybe some other contenders for that. You know, I already talked about Dream Theater, Periphery, but I mean, Dream Theater, they kind of had their heyday in the 90s. They were the kings. I think it's Haken's turn. Next up at number 6, I've got Life is But a Dream by Avenged Sevenfold, which is my favorite album of this year so far. And it's, I mean, usually they aren't a progressive metal band. They're more traditional heavy metal, hard rock, like catchier, more accessible stuff for the masses. But on this one, they really went avant-garde and weird. They did so much genre bending and brought in so many different styles, ranging from, you know, their typical stuff like hardcore, metalcore, traditional heavy metal, then also bringing in some weird stuff like The album ends with a classical piano song. Before that, it's like a weird kind of show tunes, big band, crooner, jazzy Frank Sinatra song. Then they have like a kind of Daft Punk, funky auto-tune song, and they have a like weird proggy, quirky Frank Zappa type song. Just everything, and the guitar solos on here are amazing by Sinister Gates, and it's definitely his work that has the most variety in it. They all sound different. Just a really great album, and a lot of the stuff they've done before is great too. Like I'm not going to go and say this is like them stepping up into greatness, because I believe they were already great, and I really love their self-titled album. I really love Nightmare. I really love City of Evil and Waking the Fallen. Those are kind of my big four Avenged Sevenfold albums. But now this is right up there. I'd say they have 5 like really great, deserving of being on like top 25 lists of decade albums. They only really have 2 duds in their catalog. I think Hail to the King is a dud. Unfortunately, just went too kind of mainstream and ripping off Iron Maiden and Metallica and stuff like that. It was kind of boring for me. And then their first album, where they're really young and it's unpolished, Sounding the Seventh Trumpet. Those 2 are kind of weak, but the rest of their discography, the other 6 albums are all amazing. The Stage right before this is another one that I didn't mention, is great, kind of where they went more progressive. But yeah, check this out if you've been writing off Avenged Sevenfold as kind of a boring mainstream safe band. Like, this is a band that took a big risk with this album, and I think people need to hear this. Next up at number 5, I've got Others by No One is the band, and the album is called Book 2, Where Stories Come From. Now, this is a band that should be a lot bigger than they are. A really amazing band. It's progressive metal from 2021. It's their second album. Book 1 is also great. They're from the US. I think they're just a small independent band. Like, I don't think this was put out by any label or anything. They put this out independently, but it's really great. I believe it's a concept album. I don't really know the story. There's like repeating themes. It's just epic, quirky, for fans of Haken, Between the Buried and Me, Dream Theater, that kind of thing. It's got some heaviness, some screams, but also a lot of great singing. Highly recommend it. Number 4, I have Protest the Hero with Palimpsest. And you see this is autographed, their vinyl version of this. I've also got the bonus Fabula and Suzette. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've got that disc that has 2 extra tracks that weren't on the main album, that were done during those sessions. So those are also great songs. I don't know how they decided which songs wouldn't make the cut, but honestly, those bonus tracks are better than some of the songs on the main album. But every song on here is great. Protest the Heroes, a really great Canadian progressive metal band. They've got a lot of punk influence, which is unusual for progressive metal, but really awesome to hear that punk energy in here. This is from 2020. It's their 5th album. I love every album they've done. My favorite is probably their first album, Kazaya. That's kind of the album that got me into progressive metal, because I was a guitar player, and I just heard that album and it just blew my mind in terms of the guitar playing on it. And yeah, that's something to check out here. The really fast guitar leads with the tapping, tap slide, sweep, just like crazy busy leads all the time. They aren't as spastic and crazy and chaotic as they were when they were younger with Kazaya, where it was all over the place. They've honed it in and focused more on songwriting and making the song cohesive and make sense and flow, and not just like jump and jar you all over the place. So the songs flow. It's really cool. The vocals on here are really great by Rhodey. You know, he can hit some high notes, and there's not really any vocalist in prog metal that sounds like him. He's got a very unique sound, and I look forward to hearing what Protest the Hero does next. I think they're working on a new album right now. Hopefully it's almost done. And number 3, Rise Radiant by Caligula's Horse. Another progressive metal album. This one's from Australia, also from 2020. It's their 5th album, put out on Inside Out Music. Everything they do is great. They have a little bit of the gent influence in there. This album has some bonus tracks on the CD copy that I have here. They do some covers. Don't Give Up by Peter Gabriel and Message to My Girl by Split Enz. Those are decent, but I think the main songs are more of what you're after here. Really great band. Number 2, Virus by Haken. Progressive metal. I've mentioned them before. This is their 2nd time being mentioned on my list. This is from 2020, their 6th album. It's a lot more metal than all their other albums. Vector and Virus really are kind of a pair of albums. Vector came out in 2018, I believe, and this came out in 2020. They kind of go together. I almost think of them as like ketchup and mustard. Here's the mustard, and because it's yellow, and Vector's red, it's kind of the ketchup. And they lean more into the gent sounds on here, but they also still have like catchy vocals, poppy moments. They have prog epics, very proggy. It's not too heavy. They don't scream or anything. So it's not like people who don't like screaming could probably still get into Haken. Highly recommend everything they do. I know not everybody puts Virus and Vector up there among the favorites, but I really like it. It's not really my favorite Haken album either. My favorite's probably their debut, Aquarius, and I really like The Mountain as well. Those are probably my 2 favorites. But everything Haken does is great, and I really like this a lot. Maybe Fauna will rise up on it and overtake it, because I am really liking Fauna. But I also really like Virus. So what can I say? Now we're at my number 1 album of the 2020s, which is Between the Buried and Me and Colors 2. This is from 2021. It was my album of the year that year. It's kind of in the progressive metalcore genre with a little bit of death metal influences. It's the 10th album by this American band, put out on the Sumerian label. 79-minute album, so I think it might be the 2nd longest on this list. It's produced by Jamie King and Between the Buried and Me, and it's a sequel to my favorite album by Between the Buried and Me, which is Colors 1. One of my favorite albums of all time. Would probably be definitely in my top 5 albums of all time. Hell, even Colors 2 almost gets in my top 5 albums of all time, I think. Between the Buried and Me is just a really great band. If maybe they're the kings of modern progressive metal, actually. Like, it's between them and Haken in terms of like bands that have just put out nothing but bangers and have put out a lot of really great material. I mean, maybe Between the Buried and Me deserves the crown because this is their 10th album. They've got more material than Haken. It's all just as strong. I think Between the Buried and Me is just a little bit heavier for people who can handle a lot of the harsh vocals, as it's very extreme. But they have moments of beauty, and they do a lot of genre bending as well, jumping around. A lot of surprises. They're a band with a lot of spastic changes, crazy fast guitar playing. Highly recommend for fans of Protest the Hero, The Human Abstract, bands like that. Yeah, and hope you found some good albums on this video. I think that's the end of my list. Comment down below, what are your favorite albums of this decade so far? Do you like any of the ones on my list? Do you hate some of the ones on my list and think they're crap? Let me know. Let me know why. Get some constructive criticism. Let me know other ones that you think I should check out or should be in contention for best albums of the decade. And until next time, peace out.